welcome to Talking Mental Skills. This is the second of the series. We're joined today by Colin Ingram. Colin's played professional cricket for nearly 20 years now, so we're very lucky to have him on board today and looking forward to chatting mental skills with him.
Colin's a real seasoned professional. He's played international cricket for South Africa, as well as all around the world in the IPL, Big Bash, PSL, just to name a few. It's going to be a really interesting chat. We're going to talk about all things mental skills and his journey throughout professional cricket. So yeah, very excited to have him on.
Welcome, Colin, to Talking Mental Skills. It's great to have you here. Lovely to be chatting with you. We wanted to dive right into talking about mental skills. So the first question, what does mental skills mean to you?
Brilliant. Firstly, thanks for having me. It's always great to sort of end up in topics like this. You know, get the brain spinning again and just and get it out there. So mental skills for me, I think it's the things that I can rely on, day to day that keep me sharp, that keep me motivated. I think it's sort of like the backbone of, especially my cricket, I suppose. Talking cricket specific, but and I think it's a growing process. I think I've got more of them now than I had when I first started, and it's been a sort of you just sort of build them up. It's something you probably acquire through going through a few things. So I don't know, that's how I view it. I don't know if that's right or wrong, but
That's really interesting, because the fact that you just said that you know more now than you did when you probably first started out is exactly what we're trying to do, is by spreading awareness for guys that before they start out, so they've got tools that, when they are actually starting their careers, it doesn't take 10 years to actually build it all up. You kind of have that foundation already. I'm hoping that's going to be really helpful.
I mean, yeah, I think just off the bat, that's, if someone had said to me, what's the one thing, after playing for this many years that I could go back and try and fast track, it would be that mental side of the game, the mental skills, the softer skills. I think, like you work hard day in day out because you have to, to increase your technical ability, your match awareness, the usual catchphrases. But the hard part of it, I think, or the part that we probably neglect most, is the mental skills. So I thought it would be great to be here and just chat about it and see where you guys are, what your views are on it and where you're going with it. So it's definitely something that fascinates me. And even now that I'm looking at a coaching side of things, how can I bring that into young players as early as possible?
Yeah, I guess, Cole, for us, we kind of wanted to start at the start, so to speak. So obviously grew up in South Africa, started your professional journey there, and I guess just kind of talk us through some of the challenges you might have faced over there in terms of your journey through the ranks. Started when you were younger and obviously worked your way up to playing international cricket. I guess if you can give us a broad kind of sense of the challenges mentally that you faced in terms of kind of in and out the side a little bit, potentially kind of doing well and then getting left out, stuff like that. So
yeah, almost it's hard to keep this short, to be honest, because it's been a really cool journey in a way. But I think if someone had to ask me what was the one trait that I've had to show the most, probably resilience. Through a few of the stories, I mean, as a kid growing up, I was fascinated by hitting a cricket ball from 2 years old, and it was great. I then got to school, and school sport in South Africa is quite big, and I struggled at school in terms of just learning ability. Going to remedial lessons, reading and writing didn't come easy to me. But every afternoon I got to the cricket nets, and I had a bit more than anyone else had, and that was really good for my confidence, and it grabbed me from young. And then you start, going through the levels. So, I was part of squads from quite young, 11, 12 years old. We had, a lot of representative stuff. Eastern Province cricket was sort of my home at that stage, so playing through the different age groups. Started playing club cricket at quite a young age because a few of my people from my district and elder guys said you should be pushing your levels up as high as you can from young. So, that was a good that was probably my first real challenge, is like going to play against men at sort of 15, 16. In South Africa in those days, I dare say there wasn't much limitations of what you could say or couldn't say to a 16-year-old or 15-year-old. So
do you think that built up some mental resilience?
Oh, massively. I mean, I was shy. Even at that age, I was a shyish type of person. So to be thrown into that sort of environment where with men on the weekend who did not enjoy being flicked over mid-wicket for six by a 16-year-old, and definitely pushed me out of my comfort zone from young. And I realised like I'm gonna have to get quite thick-skinned, and in that way I think that was sort of the start of it for me. And then I hit probably my first big sort of slap in the face when in South Africa to play SA under 19, and I dare say here in the UK as well, to play England under 19, SA under 19. That's kind of the stepping stone into first class cricket, and especially with only having 6 teams. Have we got a technical glitch? Okay, we're sorting it out. So only having 6 teams, I was like, this is the goal. This is what I'm working towards, and I kind of spent from probably sort of 3 or 4 years working towards that, and had a really good national week, up in the top 5 run scorers, and wasn't selected. I went to the national camp where there was like 30 of us, and wasn't selected, and didn't go to the World Cup. And it was a massive sort of gut punch for me. Like I'd been sort of at that age, you live as a bit of a dreamer, and that took me quite a while to get over, to be honest. And then sort of went to university, which I thought was a great experience in terms of for a young person to be kind of like out of the house on their own, making their own decisions. Are you going to go to training or aren't you? Like no one's really going to notice. And after a while, I realized, this is something I really want to do. So sort of, I've got a like I said, this will be a long answer. I've got a morning in my mind where I literally just strapped my shoes on and went for a run and was like, okay, I'm going to do this again. And I thought that was probably the turning point for me, where I stopped relying on other people, coaches. And at 19 years old, I was like, well, I'm out in the world on my own. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to have to make sure that I find ways to contribute, find ways to win games, find ways, not excuses, because otherwise I'm just going to have to finish my studies and go and work a job. So it was a great period for me where I was sort of out in the wilderness on my own. And then was picked up to play, started playing some twos cricket, went pretty well. And the franchise in South Africa had moved away and had moved back to Port Elizabeth. And they wanted a few of us young players. I wasn't studying in Port Elizabeth at that time. And they said, could you come back? And I was midway through my studies and quite enjoying it. And decided to stop that and actually go, because the chance of being picked up in South Africa is so slim. Mm-hmm. And after 2 years of being absolutely nowhere in first class cricket, I was released, which was probably my second biggest lesson I learned in cricket, that it can come and go pretty quickly. Yeah. So I spent a year sort of away from the game in a way. Like I came out to the UK, played club cricket in Scotland of all places, worked for £6 an hour coaching, and then somewhere in there decided again I'm going to have another crack at it. Went back, played in the twos, did really well, and we had our T20 comp in South Africa was always the last week of the competition, the last week, sort of like month of the season, last competition. So the Warriors had been useless that year, and they decided, well, we only played 5 T20s a year at that stage, and they said, let's get 10 T20 games, like practice games, to like really be in the flow. But by the time we hit our 5 games, we'll be in great nick. But now I'm in the twos, and we got to play against the main side. So I just saw it as a perfect opportunity. Some of those guys had bombed me in the nets for 2 years, and it wasn't fun. And I was like, well, we've got a white ball now, and I'm in good touch, and I'm going to take you down. Anyway, through those 10 practice games, really played well and got into the side, a couple of innings that really went well, and got re-signed up again. And the rest is kind of history, but those couple scenarios really tested me. And I think that they probably taught me the biggest lessons in my career. And now when I practice, I still practice like, well, the end could be tomorrow. So make sure it's not, in a way, like find a way to get through it. Yeah. So I told you it'll be a long answer.
That's good. So just going back slightly, do you remember when you did get kind of released from that period, and then you had to go over to Scotland to get another opportunity? What was it that made you want to carry on, and what was it that helped you kind of get through that, instead of just saying, strapping my shoes on, go for a run, and want to carry this on? What are those things? Is it the toughness?
Yeah, I think I'd had a taste for it. So in a way, and I've always watched a lot of cricket. So I looked at the guys playing on TV, and I'm like, I think I could play there, but how do I make sure that I'm more prepared, I'm a bit tougher, I'm a bit stronger, I went about building a new technique. So in a way, I was in the backgrounds. I wasn't, in a main environment or main squad, but in my mind, I was building up some new stuff that I could take back and be more successful. So I'd had enough of a taste that I knew I could do it. And the alternative was to go work at coach at £6 an hour. So I was like, well, it's worth putting extra effort and putting extra thought into into something that's really worthwhile.
That's interesting. I guess going along the journey again, the next step is probably international cricket to touch on. And I guess from our point of view on this page, we try to talk a lot about the pressures of the sport and the pressures of different sports people play. And I guess in terms of cricket, that's probably the highest pressure you can get is international cricket and playing for your country, and obviously something you dreamed of.
Yeah.
And so I guess from our point of view, it's how do you learn to cope with that? Like what goes through your head when you're making your debut for South Africa? It's a dream. You've obviously gone through getting dropped, getting released, going over to the UK, playing club cricket, all these moments in your life that might have led up to this dream being come true, that you're playing for South Africa, you represent your country. So how do you deal with all that pressure, all that build-up to say, actually, I'm going to go out and I'm going to score 100 on debut like you did? Yeah,
it's a difficult one. Like, in my mind, I was, even a couple of years before that, I wanted to build, in my mind, I was saying to myself, I want to build a solid base of skills. And then, if I build a strong base, I can perform at a better level for longer, more consistently. So, in a way, I think when I got to playing international cricket, I just kind of stuck to whatever I was doing. The occasion was big, in that I felt like I'd reached a milestone. I don't know, maybe being a nervous kid, just walking into a room full of people was a pressure moment for me. That almost terrifies me. It's still to this day, probably. It probably more terrifies me than going out to bat. Going out to bat feels natural for me. It feels like that's a place I want to be. Walking into a room full of people, a lot more of a challenge because it's not a place I really want to be. But I think, in terms of the mental skills, I walked into a South African team that had some massive superstars, and I just felt like I wanted to contribute. I wanted to play the game the way I'd play the game and try not get too distracted by the rest. I think some personalities that comes easier than others, but definitely for me, I just wanted to keep things simple. It's the same white ball or red ball, and use that base of skills that I'd been working on, because certainly that was the goal when I didn't just want to play cricket. I wanted to go up levels. So, looking for those ways to contribute in any team you're playing in, I think is a skill in itself, a mental skill. Looking for opportunities, not just thinking, it'd be nice to be here. I feel like, in a way, a lot of my successes have come through that process, in that I just like playing the game. I want to be out there, whatever level it is. But certainly playing international cricket, you get tested a lot more in terms of your resilience, a lot more the pressure in terms of the media, the pressure in terms of the type of bowling you're going to face. I've faced the bowlers there that make you look silly. So, if you don't have a strong, sort of strong backbone of skills, mental skills like you guys are talking about, that's where I think you get tested very quickly. And if you haven't done that, I think it's easy to slink away, which in a way I probably, over a long period I got worn down and hence, sort of drifted out of international cricket again. But it's an environment where you're constantly under threat. So if you're not resilient enough to deal with it, it's going to test your character.
Yeah. So you talking about those mental skills, the strong base of mental skills that you kind of need as an international cricketer. Can you touch on any of those that you might have, or that you might remember from when you were playing then, and even from when you're playing now? What kind of mental skills would you be using?
Yeah, I think knowing yourself well as a person. So having a certain amount of backing. When you walk out to face one of the world's best bowlers, if you don't back yourself, no one's going to. So you have to know yourself and sort of trust yourself and your game, I think, to some degree. I think that's one really important skill. And then to have some sort of resilience, toughness, that type of thing, which I think, like I said, through some of my experiences that I had, I almost feel quite grateful for them, even though at the time you're pretty much in tears and want to pack it in. But that it teaches you, how far you can push yourself, and how tough and resilient you can be. So in a way, I think I'm sort of grateful for those experiences. And when I got to that level, I could lean on them to some degree. That and I mean, those are just two basic ones, but then there are numerous other ones, I think. But being able to know your own game well enough and trust it, sort of that level of trust in yourself, I think's a big one. And if you've cut corners along the way over years, that's where it'll come out. So a lot of guys get to international cricket or make it to a first-class cricket team, but that's where someone starts to poke you and look for holes. And if you haven't built up a strong base, so in my mind, I think that might have been one of my skills, that in my mind I wanted to build up a strong base of skills so that I didn't have far to fall. If I was out of form, I knew I was couple good drills away. If the press were hammering me about something, I'm a couple balls away from hitting it well again. So I think that approach probably worked for me to some degree and has carried me through the rest of my career. But certainly in terms of individual skills, I'm probably not the right person. I think we need to get into our head with a serious psychologist to find all of it. Yeah.
But I liked what you said earlier about you walking into a room and getting nervous, because you can walk out to a stadium of 80,000 people and not get nervous. So for you then, obviously cricket, you've got a little bit of time to prepare yourself to actually go out and bat in front of 80,000 people, whereas maybe walking into a room, you might get overwhelmed slightly. So how do you stop yourself from getting overwhelmed when you're walking out to bat in front of 80,000 people? Because it's a very similar sort of...
It's an interesting one. I mean, I get nervous. I like having nerves. If I'm not nervous, I've been nervous since a 7-year-old kid. It's like a drug for me in a way. Like, it fuels me up. So when I'm walking out of bat, it's a nervous excitedness, but that's where I want to be. I don't particularly want to be in a room full of people I don't know. That makes me uncomfortable, and I've had to work on that as a skill as well, on the side. But walking out to bat, I'm excited to be there. It doesn't matter, and I think maybe over the years I've tried to simplify it a bit more. So as in, it's just a white ball and I've got to hit it. Like, that's the number one goal for me. So when I'm walking out of bat, some days, I'm hell of a nervous and there's 10 people in the stadium, and that might be because I might be not in great form or whatever, and then that's another challenge that you have to overcome. But certainly walking out in front of 80,000 people in an international or an IPL or a Big Bash, man, what a privilege. Like, I want to be there. I've always felt like I've had this extra edge where I can win a game from nowhere, or I'm a dreamer. I've since a kid, and it's been hard for me the last few years. I always dreamed like I would hit the last ball of a World Cup for 6 to win it, like for South Africa. Like, World Cups in South Africa have always been big, but that's the type of things that I like to feed myself as and I feel like when I walk out in front of all those people, that's what I've got with me. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, I guess it's that reframing. We looked into a bit of Dan Carter, and one of his quotes was that pressure's a privilege.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of the way you do it is you reframe the scenario in your head. You don't think of it as a pressure on yourself to do well or perform. It's what you worked for, and this is ultimately you living out your dream. Like you're saying, This is what you want to do. This is what you want to be doing. So that's really interesting. Because that was one of the topics we were going to cover, is those big worldwide tournaments, because obviously they're the type of thing where you get picked up for big money, you're in front of a massive crowd, you've talked about the pressures, about the owners, about the fans, all those different things that go on that probably people like us don't really see. So I guess if you could kind of put into words what that might do negatively, in terms, I know you say it's a privilege and you love it, but the negative side of all that stuff in terms of your mindset and any mental fatigue you might have had across those tournaments.
You've asked a good few questions there, but I think, I mean, even just thinking about it now when you say it, I think pressure's always there. It's a self-inflicted sort of thought process. So, like, I know that if I've put extra pressure, it's me putting extra pressure. At the end of the day, like, can you simplify it and reframe it into something that works for you? I think, starting off when I was a kid, shy kid goes out to bat, he's like, well, now I'm going to show you what I can do. I'm pretty much that same person now. It doesn't matter what the crowd or the occasion. Certainly in terms of mental fatigue, was something you touched on in there, and having that extra sort of hype and build around like an IPL or a Big Bash. That'll poke holes in my theory. They'll be like, oh, can you still do that? Are you still excited to get out there? Is the pressure not going to overwhelm you? So it's not, I mean, for me, definitely, I've always been excited to get there. And some of these tournaments, I think, have been sort of like my international cricket to some degree. So when I'm there, I'm excited to be there and I want to be there. Certainly the IPL is one where it took me, I went when I was younger, and then it took me years to get back to it. So when I got back, it was quite a big deal for me. But the same thing, I love the game. I love hitting the ball. I love being out there. So in that way, I try to keep it to that, sort of simple side. And I think a big skill that maybe I've had to work on quite hard over the years is like sort of blocking out the excess noise to some degree. So being able to like put aside, is that really important? Is it important that someone in the press is picking apart your technique? Is it important if at an IPL the owners are saying to you, hey, you need to put some runs on the board and win us a game? Or like try and sift through those and realize what is important to me and what do I need to do to get runs or put in that performance, not all the excess noise. So in a way, maybe that shy kid sort of blocks out some of that stuff, which has carried me and been good for me. But it's certainly something you got to work on hard. I remember being in the national team and Gary Kirsten said to us, like at that stage, South African cricket team was under huge pressure. The public didn't like us. We lost every World Cup qualifying game. Things weren't going particularly well. And he said, just keep your circle small. Like, what your support base is. You got your family and friends. Within this room's a safe place. And I think that's kind of stuck with me with a lot of things. Like, I know at the end of the day, I got to go home and be a good father, a good husband. Firstly, those are the first two things. I got to try to score some runs and enjoy that side, which is sort of an expression of my life as well. But keep your circle small. Like when you, especially when you're under pressure, sort of simplify, reframe, keep it small. Don't play it up. I think the modern day world thrives on that. The social media, but what's really going to help you or not help you, I think you have to decide. And that's kind of a part of the game that still fascinates me.
Yeah.
And something that you'll work on as a player through your career, you'll work on as a person through your life, you'll work on as a coach if you're going to coach. So it's not just relevant to what we do, but it's certainly a skill in itself, being able to separate what's important and what's not.
Absolutely. You basically just said that, what I'm hearing is less is better. The smaller your circle is, the easier it becomes for you, and the less you think about when you go out to bat and you're just trying to hit the white ball, the easier it becomes. And you're absolutely right about that. That is a difficult skill that requires hard work on, but it's also the awareness of understanding what is good for you, what you need to think about, and being able to block out the noise that's coming from outside. That is the hard part.
Yeah.
But that then takes us to your cricket now, to all of the stuff in the UK where your average for the one day games is very high. So you're obviously doing very well at Glamorgan. So can you tell us anything about now what you do, what you might not have done before your international career, in terms of mental skills, in terms of mental prep, or?
Yeah, interesting question. I think you grow. I've always had like a journeyman type mentality. Like from year to year, you got to change and be better. And if you want to, because longevity in sport is a whole separate topic. I look at some of the guys who've been around for years, like even a Jimmy Anderson or someone like that, and you're like, man, the things he must have been through, the injuries, I've had a few big speed bumps along the way in my career, but those guys have got a lot, especially at that level. So to keep coming back, it takes quite a lot. So I've always thought, if I do the work, the rest will play out on its own. Like I'll be fine. And I think that's I mean, coming to the UK, although I didn't have international cricket to now look forward to, I was like, okay, well, how long do you want to play? How good do you want to be? I think one of the things that's always stuck with me is if I walked away from the game and I wasn't as good as I could be, then I would have a regret. And this was a dream or a feeling that I got from quite young, that you want to be as good as you can be, surely. And stepping away from international cricket to some degree was quite tough, but I realized at that stage I needed to make my game better again. I needed to, evolve as a player again and improve. And certainly coming out here gave me that opportunity. And then that's where it sort of led on. So if you do well, what's the next goal? What did I want to move on to? And that's when I ended up going it took me 4 years to get to a Big Bash. People don't realize that. They don't see it. They don't see that. I had he has a contract. Oh no, we've decided on someone else overnight. Like stuff like that went on for a few years. So that keeps you hungry. It kept me thinking, I still got to get out there. But certainly in terms of mental skills, I think it's a slow development, and you use your experiences to keep on developing. I dare say last year was one of my tougher years. Coming out to UK after extended period of time off with COVID, and then just not being able to do it like I wanted to, and really fighting that. And again, it taught me you need to evolve. I need to do things differently again this year. There's certain parts of my game I needed to maybe pick apart again. But certainly it's a process that you go through all the time. And if you get used to that, I think as a sports person, being, sort of taking a step back, say, what do I need now? How do I need to evolve again? How am I going to get better? And ask yourself those questions. I think then, day in, day out, you start doing them, which definitely carries you.
Yeah, for sure. I think the evolving nature you're talking about there is something that everyone can kind of take on board. I think it's mental skills, one of those things where there's no right answer. People kind of will always evolve and find stuff that works for them along the way. But I think from my point of view, obviously, we played together for 4 or 5 years now. And from a personal perspective, and what people might want to hear about is, what I think stands out for you is your fearless approach to the game. I think when you play T20 cricket especially, but in any form you play, is that it kind of, you give off that fearless approach of when you go out to bat, it's not about taking a low risk option, it's about you backing yourself and seeing the ball and hitting it wherever it needs to go, and kind of playing the game in that type of free manner. So I guess it's, how have you managed to do that over such a long period of time to sustain that? And has it always been like that, or has it developed? And like you say, have you evolved to use it better? Were you kind of more fearful of getting out earlier and then kind of developed, or was it always ingrained in you from a young age?
That's such a cool question, actually. Just to reflect on that, to go back. So I think at a real young age, I played extremely freely. I had a dad who basically said, see how far you can hit it. And I think that was through his own experience. He said he used to hit it really well. And at about 15, 16, they had a coach come over, a professional coach, and said, oh, you can't just stick it over mid-wicket every second ball. So he was very mindful of that when I started playing that, because I think he went through a period where he lost and couldn't strike it well because he was trying to play really correctly. So, when I was growing up, we were all trying to play Test cricket. That was, so technique was everything, and hitting the ball on the ground, which didn't really suit me. So I've been fortunate in that white ball cricket sort of came along and saved me to some degree. But I always liked to play freely because I felt like I could impose myself on the game to some degree. I could affect the game more positively, and it suited the way I picked up the ball. I like to strike the ball out in front of me instead of waiting as late as maybe I should. And certainly through my career, so there was a period where I was overcoached, sort of late teens, maybe early 20s when I first started playing first class cricket. Again, the whole mindset was being tough, batting for long periods. My technique, I dare say, then we had in South Africa at that stage, everyone went the sort of closed bat face, as a left-hander, really straight back into the ball, which prevented me from playing the way I'd played as a kid. So I had to, when I was released from that first contract, and I'm out in the wilderness in Scotland, as mentioned, I decided at some stage I needed to change my technique. I needed to go more free again. My technique needed to marry how I was thinking and feeling at the wicket, which was, I want to play. So I thought that was a great lesson that I took out of that period, and hence when I then came back and, like I said, I ended up earning my contract back basically through playing white ball, but it was my ability to hit the ball, which was pretty similar to how I'd been at 14, 15. So my wife had to feed me tennis balls because she refused to feed me hard balls with a bowling machine for about 4 months. And that's all I hit, basically, besides playing the games on the weekend, because club practice in Scotland wasn't a really big deal. It was more like come down to the pub on the Friday and have a beer. But I think marrying those two, and when I talk to young players now, I try and say the same thing. You need, in terms of how you feeling at the wicket, in terms of what you mentally, how you see the ball, and how your natural flow is. You need to set your technique up to marry with that, because then you're playing in your most natural feel, in your most natural way. And I think, to answer your question, I try and stick to that. I feel like I can play shots at stages that maybe other people can't, and then at stages it gets me in trouble as well, but I can live with that because that's me being me. I'm not particularly flamboyant in any other part of my life, to be honest. You know me well. But when I go to bat, I feel like it's a place of expression for me. So, I want to keep that as natural and play with as much flow as I can. And certainly as I've got older, I've just tried to stick to that as much as possible. If that helps.
Absolutely. So just keeping it natural, keeping it simple, and like you said, working with the guys now, would you go back and say to yourself as a 14, 15-year-old to just be as free and natural as you can and try and avoid the pressure of trying to be too good technically and just kind of marry up your mind and body like you said beforehand?
I mean, there's a danger. I mean, I work with some 15-year-olds now. There's a danger when you say to people be free, that they think that just swing at every ball. Free for me means free to make a decision, not limited to some degree. So, with the amount of white ball people watch these days, especially 15-year-olds, let's say, we use one as an example, they just see guys teeing it off to all parts, but, there's still other parts of the game that you need to develop in terms of to build a strong base, like I was saying. So free for me is free in terms of being able to play in the way that you want to play, not free as in, we're going to swing at every ball. And I think there's a difference. So marrying your mindset and how you think and feel as a person into your technique is very important, and especially at that young age, so that it feels natural. I mean, the most gifted players, if you go talk to them, they just play. They don't really question it that much. But I think having a technical awareness is still important because that's part of the game. That's what allows you to access the ball. It allows you, to play in a way that you want. But certainly marrying up that, how you are as a person and how you think and feel and play to your technique is very, very important to make it as natural as possible. Because I think, we're talking batting, bowling, fielding. It's for us, most of us who've spent years and years doing it, it's an expression. You're almost like an artist, and you want an artist to, paint the picture that most suits them and that they feel. So I think that part's important, that you don't end up fighting your technique, or mentally you have to work so hard to work with your technique that it's not natural and then wears you down. So I think, that for me, that natural flow and feel, if you can get that into your game, and the good players, the guys who are at the top elite level, they marry their mindset and their technique together and they become, as successful as they can be. That would be from my experience, seeing it from, my opinion, I would say.
That's really valuable. I love it. It's such good insight into kind of where we are with cricket at the moment in terms of mindset without digging too deep into theory and all of that stuff. So that is it in its simplest form. How can we all become better and access our natural ability? It's actually just marrying those things together. So where does that take you now then, in terms of the next kind of 5 years for you? Are you going to kind of go into helping younger guys like this? Because I know you're into your coaching at the moment. Where does that kind of stand you?
I think for now, it's sort of very evident to me that I still want to carry on playing. So on the one side of things, sort of working on me and developing me as I have been over a long period. But I think what's sort of excited me in a way is that I can start building a separate side of my sort of career, which is coaching. And I see the two totally separate. I've said it to a number of people, but I see being a player is like being a kid. It's all about you. You just want to go out there and have fun and, have a crack. As a coach, you're like a bit like a parent. You have to be deliberate in your message. You have to have someone's best interest at heart. So I'm really excited in terms of building that side. And my coaching philosophy is going to be mindset first.
My next question is kind of, after this chat, it'd be interesting to know what
your philosophy would be as a coach, and it's if it's going to be mindset first or
And mindset first. Like, listen, cricket over 120 years is also Test cricket, so to speak, and cricket in general. You have to have some sort of technique. There's a lot to it, and I think that side of the game fascinates me. But you can have the best player in the world in terms of technique, like ultra perfect technique, but with a poor mindset or poor mental skills like we're talking about, and you're not going to be very good. You flick that around, you can have someone with a terrible technique, and we see it all the time. Really strong mind, great set of mental skills, and they can be really successful. So I think that side of the game for me is first. If you're walking into net, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? Start there, and build the rest in. I think that through my own experience, that's where I would like to start as a coach. I think the technical side is important. It's not like It's not like I'm going to coach people to be like, oh, technique doesn't matter, because that's a method. But what drives that method is what's going on between your ears, and I think that's fascinated me more and more in the last couple of years.
So just to put that into a nice, well-rounded summary, what do you know now that you wish you knew as a kid or when you were first starting out in South Africa? In terms of mental skills, just to sum it up.
Well, firstly, I know that they're very important.
Yeah.
That I think what I know now is to be as natural to yourself as you can. Don't be scared to ask yourself the hard questions at stages. Don't fear having to go through a few things, because I think as a young kid, or even as early in your career, so to speak, you feel like everything has to go really smoothly. Like, oh yeah, I'm just going to walk into a team, I'm going to knock it around, I'm going to get a couple hundreds, and then play the next 15 years and just be good. I think that's how I wanted it to be. And if someone had said to me, listen, going through a few hard things will be really good for you, they'll ask you some questions and it'll develop your game more, don't fear them. I think I would have liked to have known that, because I definitely, as I said, a shy young person, every time there was a massive challenge, it was really hard. But it sort of set me up in a way, so grateful for that. So that's something I know now that I wish I'd known then, because there have been some tears along the way, as everyone knows. Everyone goes through it. That, and to, like I said, be excited to be out there. If you're not excited about playing sport, and you're not excited to be out on the park when the pressure's on, then you're wasting your time. Might as well go find something better to do, which, that's the essence of life. You need a purpose. My purpose has always been get out there and enjoy it. And I think there were stages where I didn't enjoy it. So if someone had given me that advice at a younger age, you got to take it on and enjoy it. If you're not, find something else. I probably would have found something else if I hadn't enjoyed it as much as I have. But I had to learn that. It wasn't something that came natural. It was, in South Africa, it was like this big dream, high pressure. We're going to go play international cricket. It's going to be awesome. Not, listen, you're going to have to go through it a bit if you want to get there, which would have been nice advice as well.
That's really valuable. Thank you, Colin. Thank you for joining us today. We've loved the chat, and yeah, that was perfect. Very good.
Absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.